The Impending Blindness of Billie Scott by Zoe Thorogood. Now, it's not often I get a book like this that absolutely blows me out of the water straight away, really early on. It came out about 2021, I think, and it is the debut graphic novel by Zoe Thorogood, and she's been exceptionally popular recently with her recent autobiographical book that she did throughout kind of COVID and the pandemic lockdown and things like that. A book that I haven't read yet but is on order, and it's kind of hard to get at the moment, but I have had it on order for a while, so hopefully it'll turn up sooner or later. But this book, when I opened it, I instantly adored the artwork for a start. It was one of the books that was a blind buy. I'm not going to pretend like that was an intended joke. The artwork, when I first looked at it, reminded me quite a lot of Taiyo Matsumoto, and his artwork in, Cats of the Louvre and Sunny and all that is exactly the type of artwork that I like. It's that kind of, caricature, not quite real, certainly not photorealistic, but a lot of character, a lot of emotion in the way the bodies are shaped, the way the faces look, the emotion on the faces. It's just a really impressive art style, I think, and how she creates and lays out the page and the panels is really innovative as well and groundbreaking, to be honest. I think the story pretty much revolves around Billie Scott, who is this artist who's working up in Middlesbrough. She's in student digs, and the opening pages says all you need to know about her as a person, really, I think, anyway, is that a letter arrives and the other students in this student household pick it up and they say, well, another letter for this Billie Scott. There's no Billie Scott that lives here. And then someone says, oh yeah, it is. It's that girl on the top floor who never comes out to her room. And then it goes to Billie, and she's basically pushed herself fully. She's all in on becoming this amazing artist. She's basically cancelled everything else out of her life that doesn't progress her art in style, in form, in skill. Anything that's to do with art she'll embrace and go forward. Anything like friendships or love or the outside world or anything that's not involved in her art and her obsession with being a great artist is being cut out of her life totally. And so she lives a very secluded, very kind of agoraphobic life in a way, but she does go out. And part of the problems is she goes out early on because she gets a letter from a gallery saying, we've accepted your application and are giving you an art exhibition. You've got 2 months to create 10 pieces of art for this exhibition. And instantly she gets blocked. She can't create, and so she decides, right, I gotta get out, I gotta be creative, and I'm not gonna find creativity and inspiration rather in this bedroom. I gotta get out. So she goes out, and then she gets into something that ends up giving her a bump on the head. Now she sticks with this bump and kind of lives through the pain and the uncomfortableness of it all for a few days, and then decides she's got to go to the doctors because she's seeing black dots and things like that. And then the doctor says that you are going to go blind because of this bang to the head. If you would come in sooner, we might have been able to do something. But now, where you're at, you are going to lose your sight, and it's going to be gone within weeks rather than months or years. It's going to be gone within 2 or so weeks. And so she's devastated. And so she comes back to the house, she starts drinking, and you realise that Billie really does rely on alcohol for any type of engagement with another human or anything like that. She really sees herself as only capable of engaging with other people meaningfully without embarrassing herself and without having crippling social anxiety by drinking. And so she goes back, she gets drunk, and then she finally just charges downstairs in her student digs and chats to the other people that live there for the first time. And then comes up with the idea of just going for it, just taking these last 2 weeks and doing 10 paintings, the best 10 paintings ever, before she loses her sight totally. So drunk, she charges out of the house and goes off on her journey to find inspiration for these 10 paintings. And as soon as she goes out, she ends up kind of becoming part of a informal hen do, I suppose, and she ends up in London. But again, she is adamant that she's not going to go back to Middlesbrough. She's not going to go back until she's accomplished this goal, until she's got 10 paintings. Because if she goes back, she'll never do it. She has started and she has to finish. So if it means living out on the streets, if it means wandering aimlessly, she is doing it until she gets those 10 paintings. And so already you get this amazing contradiction in character with Billie Scott, which I love. I love contradictions. She can't see the strength of character it takes to be so adamant in having this devastating news, but then equally just pushing through it and going, right, I need 10 paintings. But obviously it's not that easy. She wanes and she gives up and she comes back and she keeps bouncing back and forth, but she does start to produce artwork. And because she ends up in London, she starts meeting people on the London streets. And because obviously she hasn't got a home in London, the people she meets are generally the people that are out on the streets living and things like that. And so she meets the hen party first, obviously, and she has a quick, easy relationship with the bride-to-be, and she takes her portrait, and then she thinks, right, I got to find 9 other more interesting faces and stories to capture now in her paintings. And various parts of the book click to kind of her journal, where she's got a little chart of 10 paintings that she has to tick when she's done. She makes notes on the people she's capturing, quick sketches. It's so well done, I think, because for a start, it's steeped in realism. The idea of Billie Scott is definitely a lot of Zoe's own personality gone into it, because this kind of, I don't know her that well, but you can tell definitely through this character that obviously she's got social anxiety problems, and she's a big fan of art and art breaking barriers and art doing something that other things can't do and having an impact that other things can't. Or in a way that other things can't, rather. And yeah, it's just a very kind of personal book and a personal character, I would say. And so she meets the hen, and then after the hen party, she ends up meeting a busker. She meets a kind of armed forces veteran who's out on the street. Then she goes into a homeless shelter and starts sleeping there, starts painting out on the streets, and she starts meeting all these random people. But what comes across more than anything is your preconceptions about, you know, people out on the street, about buskers, about Hindus, all of these people that if you were living in Britain, like I am, when you're out on a night out or whatever, you'll see a Hindu or you'll see a homeless person or you'll see a busker, and they're always the people that you kind of pass by, you never really get their full story, you kind of almost avoid them in some kind of subconscious way, because like the Hindu, they might be loud or over the top, or the busker, you listen to and move on, maybe give a couple of pence to, but you don't really interact in a meaningful way. This book tends to focus on the people that you wouldn't necessarily interact in a meaningful way with, that actually exist in the real world, and the characters feel real, they feel lived in. And Billie herself, going through this trauma of her blindness, of her sight getting progressively worse, again, meeting these people gives her that inspiration, gives her that energy to push forward. She still struggles with her drinking and using it as a tool to help her interact. And then when other people kind of, you know, show her that she's got strength that she doesn't even realise, she rebels against this. She doesn't want to be told that she's got strength. And a really complex character. But what this book, more than anything in my head, is it's just an overwhelming, optimistic book, looking at life and looking at real life. It's literally someone being handed a card saying, look, you are going to lose the thing you value most. So you are literally going to have to search everything inside and out to live in a new and different way and push through it in a different way and rely on other people and let other people into your life as well. And so ultimately this kind of story of Billie Scott is a very optimistic, fulfilling story. And yeah, it's a real feel-good story, even though a lot of it is very hard. You know, some of the kind of stories that the people go through and things like that are harsh. Billie losing her sight herself is quite harsh, but ultimately the thing that I got most from this book is such an overwhelming feeling of optimism, that people can do anything, that you don't have to have sight to be a great artist, you don't have to have a record deal to be a great musician like the buskers on the street, you don't have to have a family back home, because there's people around you who will fill that gap, you know. And so there's tons and tons of different really optimistic themes and things going through. And then to top it all off, the art, it's just phenomenal. There's a very muted colour palette throughout, so quite dull yellows and dull blues and reds, but it doesn't make the pages ugly or anything. It gives them quite a unique look colour-wise. but the pencil work and the inking work is just phenomenal. The characters are all really unique and interesting. The dialogue as well she writes is fabulous. She's really firing on all cylinders. The best thing about this is the characters. It's all about engaging. It's all about these conversations, whether they're good, whether they're bad, whether they're frustrating. It's all these conversations back and forth. It's very aspirational as well. Everyone in this book wants to achieve something and wants to have a good life. No one starts out in this book wanting to kind of, have an awful life. Some of them are horrible people and they don't turn around in this book at all, but a lot of them are really kind of optimistic, tragic figures in a way. But ultimately, out of all that tragedy comes amazing futures and stories and optimism. It's a fabulous book. There's a part of it that really did make me smile from year to year, because you could have read it and it could have almost come across as corny in a way, because it's quite, it is quite corny in a way, but it fits the narrative beautifully. Now, I don't want to spoil anything, but it's when Billie really puts her own feelings and her own fears to one side and just does something really special and significant to help a person's dream be fulfilled. And when she does that, I think it just makes her a better human being and pushes her forward in a different way. And this book, it just read it. That's all I'll have to say. Just read it. I can waffle on about how I enjoyed this bit and that bit and how the art was amazing. But in general, it is a really worthwhile read, I think. The book itself is oversized, bigger than a Marvel omnibus, bigger than a deluxe version, bigger than a standard type trade paperback. Not that much smaller, or not that much size difference really from Dark Horse Library edition. It's in that same vein. It is got a nice thick matte finish paper, not glossy at all. And the only issue I found is that the paper was too good in a way, because it had a thickness that you kind of are constantly fighting with it to stay open at some points, because the paper is such high quality. But that's not a complaint, that's just, sometimes you have to fight with a book to make it do what you want to do. But either way, I certainly am looking forward to getting more into Zoe Thorogood's back catalogue and seeing what she's got coming out. And yeah, really, really loved this book. So thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.